Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're diving into a topic that's pretty heavy and pretty real, meth mouth.
Yeah, definitely. That's a tough one.
It's something that, people might think, "Oh, I've heard about that," but it goes way deeper than I think a lot of people realize.
It does. And the term meth mouth, it's kind of like something out of a horror movie when you hear it.
Right.
But the truth is, it's a very real consequence
It is.
of meth use, and it can be devastating, frankly.
So for someone who, maybe hasn't heard that term, can you just break down for us what are we even talking about when we say meth mouth?
Sure. Picture teeth that are just blackened, stained, like rotting, like down to the core.
Ugh.
And that's meth mouth. It's severe tooth decay and gum
Yep.
disease that's specifically linked to methamphetamine use.
And it's not just a cosmetic thing either, right?
Yeah. No, this is serious stuff.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly painful, and it can really impact every aspect of a person's life. Eating, speaking, even just feeling confident enough to smile.
Yeah, we were looking at this article and some of the things they talk about, it's intense, like battery acid, drain cleaner. I mean, you don't even want to think about those things anywhere near your mouth. How do those chemicals actually, damage your teeth?
Well, you're talking about the core ingredients of methamphetamine.
Right.
And yeah, you hit it on the head. They are incredibly corrosive. The acidity in meth just goes right at your tooth enamel, which is that protective layer.
Right.
And without it, teeth are just left totally vulnerable.
Oh, so it's like stripping them bare.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow.
And then you've got, all the other stuff that comes with using.
Yeah, and it's crazy because one of the things they talk about in here is dry mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big deal too, huh?
Huge. Methamphetamine really messes with your saliva production, and you end up with what's called xerostomia, which is basically chronic dry mouth.
Right.
And you might think, oh, saliva, whatever, but it's actually your mouth's first line of defense.
It's like, it doesn't sound very glamorous, but it's important.
It's crucial. It's constantly working to neutralize acids, wash away food particles, keep bacteria in check.
Right.
But when you're using meth and your mouth is drier than, well, a desert, then the bacteria can just go wild.
Oh, it's like a breeding ground.
It is. And they're feasting on any leftover food, producing even more acid, which further eats away at your enamel. So you can see where this is going.
So it's a double whammy. You've got the meth attacking, and then on top of it, you don't have your natural defenses, so it's like an open door for all this other stuff.
Yeah, and then to add insult to injury, we have to factor in the sugar cravings that often come with meth use.
Right. The article mentions that meth can trigger these intense cravings for sugary drinks and candy and things like that.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's the last thing you need in that situation,
The
right?
absolute last thing. But in the throes of addiction, logic and healthy choices, they kind of go out the window.
Right. You're not thinking about long-term consequences.
Exactly. It's all about satisfying that immediate craving.
So you're feeding the addiction, but then you're also feeding the problem in your mouth.
Absolutely. And it's easy to forget how important your diet is for your teeth. We always
Right.
talk about brushing and flossing,
Right.
but it goes way beyond that.
It's like your whole body's got to be working.
Exactly. Imagine living off candy bars for days on end. I mean, your body, including your teeth, is going to be screaming for mercy. That sugar, it's just fuel for the fire, for those harmful bacteria in your mouth. And without proper nutrients, your body, it can't repair itself properly.
Right.
And that includes the tissues in your mouth. So, it's this vicious cycle.
And on top of all that, this article mentions something called bruxism.
Oh, yeah, bruxism. You know how sometimes, like when you're stressed, you might catch yourself clenching your jaw or grinding your teeth?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, bruxism is basically the clinical term for that.
Okay.
And meth use can really kick that into overdrive because it messes with your nervous system. So imagine that clenching and grinding, but times 1,000.
Oh, man. That's got to do some damage.
Oh, absolutely. You're talking about teeth literally cracking under that kind of pressure.
Wow.
And remember, this is all happening to teeth that are already weakened by the acid, ravaged by bacteria.
Right. They're already vulnerable.
Exactly. So it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, your mouth is under constant attack.
Mm.
And then, to make matters worse, isn't it true that addiction often leads to neglecting just basic hygiene?
Yeah, sadly, that's a big part of it. When someone's caught in that cycle of addiction, even essential things like brushing, flossing, going to the dentist, they just fall by the wayside.
Because your whole life is consumed by the substance.
Exactly. And it's tragic, but it's a common consequence of, just how powerful the grip of addiction can be. And it kind of leads us to a difficult truth, which this article doesn't shy away from it. It straight up says that meth mouth is often irreversible.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was wondering about. It's like we're talking about all this stuff, and a lot of it is about prevention. But once the damage is done, is it too late?
The unfortunate reality is once that enamel is gone, it's gone.
It's gone.
And the decay, if it's reached the point of tooth loss, well, those teeth are gone too.
Right.
I mean, dental work can definitely help to manage the consequences and try to, give people back some quality of life, but it can't completely undo the damage.
Right. There's no, like, magic wand.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah. I read this statistic in the article. It's pretty startling. It said that 96% of meth users had cavities.
It's a staggering number, isn't it?
It's almost everyone.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how serious the impact is.
Yeah.
Especially with long-term use.
Right.
It's not really a matter of if, but when these problems are going to show up.
So I know we have to kind of, like, face the tough facts here, but is there any good news? Is there any hope for people who are dealing with this? What can be done?
Look, there's always hope. Reversing the damage might not be on the table, but treatment can make a huge difference in a person's life. We can't necessarily turn back the clock, but we can definitely help people manage their symptoms, regain some functionality, and maybe, just maybe, even get back to a place where they feel good about smiling again.
Okay, so that's encouraging. So what kind of treatments are we talking about here?
Well, there are a bunch of different approaches that can be helpful. For example, you've got dental crowns, which are basically like little caps that fit over the damaged teeth to protect them and kind of restore their shape and their strength.
This is like giving the tooth a little helmet.
Yeah, kind of. And then, for teeth that have been lost completely, dental implants are becoming more and more common. That's where they surgically put a titanium post into the jawbone.
Oh, wow.
And that acts as like an artificial root for a crown to be attached to. So essentially, you're giving someone a brand new tooth.
Wow. It's amazing what they can do these days.
I know, it's incredible. And then, for less severe cases, there are things like veneers, which are basically thin shells that they bond to the front of the teeth to improve how they look. And then, of course, in very severe cases where a lot of teeth are damaged, or even all of them, dentures might be the best option.
So it sounds like there's a whole range of options depending on what someone's dealing with.
Exactly. But it's super important to remember that all of these treatments, they're really just addressing the symptoms. The root cause here is the methamphetamine addiction, and that has to be addressed if we want to really help someone break free from this cycle.
Yeah. Fixing the teeth is one thing, but you got to deal with the root of the problem.
100%. Dental treatment is crucial for restoring their oral health, but it has to go hand in hand with addiction recovery.
And recovery can look really different for everyone, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all.
You got it. There are so many paths to recovery. You've got detox programs, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, therapy, support groups. It's really about finding what works best for the individual because everyone's journey is going to be unique.
Right. And it takes a lot of strength, a lot of support to get through that. It's interesting. We've been talking about all this, all the science, all the treatments, but it makes you think, like, what about just the human cost of all of this?
Oh, absolutely.
Of meth mouths, but also of addiction, just in general,
Yeah.
It's easy to hear something like this and think, wow, that's really awful, but I don't know anyone who uses meth, but the reality is it's like this impacts all of us in some way.
I think that's a really important point. This isn't just about teeth. This is about people, about families, communities. It affects our healthcare system. I mean, the financial burden alone is huge, but it's really the human cost. It's immeasurable, the shattered lives, the potential that's lost.
It's like we're talking about meth mouth, but it's like this one thing. It just opens up this whole can of worms of social problems, economic problems.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just makes you realize that addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right. It touches everything and everyone in some way.
Exactly.
And I think it really highlights why it's so important that we look at this as a public health crisis.
Yes.
Not just a personal failing, right?
Right.
It's about access to resources. It's about education. It's about breaking down the stigma that keeps people from getting the help they need.
Yes, 1,000%. And so much of what we've talked about today, it really points to how crucial prevention is.
Absolutely.
Early intervention.
100%. And that's why, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we understand about addiction, about the science behind it, the causes, the consequences, the pathways to recovery, the better equipped we are to actually make a difference, you know?
Right, because then you can actually do something.
Exactly.
Well,
And whether that's supporting someone who's struggling, advocating for better policies, even just educating ourselves and having these conversations, it all matters.
well said. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure, really.
This has been very eye-opening.
Good, good.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been pretty heavy, but I think really, really important. And remember, we focused on meth mouth, but this is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Substance abuse. It affects us in countless ways, and it's up to all of us to educate ourselves, challenge our own biases, and advocate for those who need help. If anything we talked about today raised any concerns for you, or if you're worried about yourself or someone you love, please reach out. There are resources out there. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline is a great place to start. You can reach them anytime at 1-800-662-HELP. Remember, knowledge is the first step towards understanding and ultimately towards healing. That's all for today's deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay well.